When the NFL is at its best, it's an emotional joyride. Thrills and frustration, elation turning into dejection, when just as your team seems resigned to lose, victory suddenly comes like a miracle, and the fans are left to feel they have witnessed something transcendent, beyond entertainment. Like a spiritual experience, it nearly defies explanation. The Seattle Seahawks and Green Bay Packers provided fans just this kind of game in 2014. Had it occurred during the regular season, it would have been unanimously declared the game of the year. That it went down during the NFC Championship made it legendary. Recently dubbed by the NFL as the second best all-time postseason finish, just behind the Minneapolis Miracle. In the decade leading up to this game, the Packers and Seahawks had developed an unusual rivalry. Despite playing in different divisions, it sometimes felt like these two teams played every season. This would be the 9th time in 11 years they had faced each other, with 3 of those being playoff showdowns. The Seahawks beat the Packers the last 2 times these teams played each other just before this game, and those wins left salty wounds that had the Packers seeking revenge. In Russell Wilson's rookie year, he beat the Packers on the final play of the game in what has been forever termed the Fail Mary. Many in the Packer organization felt the replacement referee's call of a touchdown on that final play and Seattle's subsequent win had cost them a chance that season to have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and thus an easier road to the Super Bowl. Then, at the beginning of the 2014 season, the Seahawks, still alit in that after Super Bowl glow, beat the doors off the Packers on that opening game of the NFL season. Percy Harvin had the best game of his short-lived Seahawks career, being utilized beautifully as that scintillating Swiss Army knife of a player that he so teased. In that same game, Aaron Rodgers refused to even throw once Richard Sherman's way, to the point of Sherman confronting him after the game to ask if Rodgers had avoided him, to which Rodgers said, "Yep." The Seahawks came into this game with home field advantage and the momentum of 3 seasons of crushing most of their competition. The wind was at their back, but not the weather. A storm blew through Seattle, its dark rolling clouds perhaps pretending the dark day ahead. Hard rain fell like it was coming from God's hose, and it seemed like for a moment the game was going to be a complete spectacle of slippery, wet-puddled chaos. Then, just before the game, the rain subsided. Cracks of sun broke through, and it turned out a traditional game would be played yet. The Seahawks chose to kick to the Packers first. Aaron Rodgers came into this game nursing a torn calf, suffered a few weeks prior. The injury had obviously slowed Rodgers in the previous game against the Cowboys, but he appeared to move much better on it throughout this game. This was Green Bay's only major injury on the offensive side of the ball. In front of him, Rodgers had an upper-level to elite offensive line, all his receiving weapons, and a couple of quality running backs. Firepower was not the question, but how to attack that special Seahawk defense. In the 2012 game, the Packers tried to throw all over the football field to start the game, and Rodgers was sacked to the tune of 8 times in just the first half. The Packers adjusted, switching to a ball control approach in the second half, and they nearly eked out the win. In the first game of the 2014 season, the Packers made the bold claim that they would run a warp speed, hurry-up offense to counter Seattle's defensive substitutions, and more specifically, the NASCAR personnel package. The no-huddle is usually very reliant on the quarterback communicating clearly to everyone of the next play. No-huddle, warp speed, loud CenturyLink, yeah, that plan failed. To begin this game, the Packers settled for an intelligent method of attack, balancing their run and pass fluidly, keeping the Seahawks on their toes. The first Packer drive looked like it was easily going to roll right into the end zone. But pride's a funny thing. It undoes the calculated strategy of patient, slow progression in favor of attacking that SOB that called you out after the last game. Rodgers thought he saw his dynamic rookie wide receiver Davante Adams break deep for a clean touchdown in the back of the end zone, but Richard Sherman was lurking, baiting his prey, waiting to strike. He intercepted Rodgers, showed off his receiver's feet on the catch, and that great long opening drive came to nothing. The LOB was in effect.
You don't try and throw the deep ball against him. You just don't.
I told them, rookie, if they try me, I'm picking you first time.
You're a genius.
Let's go.
You're a genius.
The Seahawks offense took the field for the first time. This was a much different unit from the one that beat the Packers in Week 1. They still had beast mode and a top-end offensive line, but invaluable tight end Zach Miller was on the injured reserve, and Percy Harvin, so electric in that first game of the year, had been traded by mid-season. Doug Baldwin, Jermaine Kearse, Ricardo Lockett, and Luke Wilson would need to produce. In the prior conference championship game, Russell Wilson, on the first play of the game, fumbled the ball to the 49ers. In this conference championship game, Russell made it to the third play when he threw an interception that was not all entirely his fault. Jermaine Kearse tipped the ball up on his attempted catch, and Hassan Clinton Dix caught the gift and nearly returned it for a touchdown. The Packers offense came back out onto the field, knocking on the door of the end zone. Seahawks fans are well acquainted with Eddie Lacy. Throughout his career, he struggled with his weight, and by the time he arrived in Seattle, he had grown slow and rotund. This version of Lacy on the Packers was a swift load with light feet, finishing his second straight year with over 1,000 yards. On a third down play from the 1, the Packers turned and gave the ball to Lacy for what looked like a sure score. The hole opened up like Star Trek doors, but Earl Thomas pressed his turbo button and he arrived to halt Lacy's momentum with one blow. The stop forced the Packers to settle for a field goal.
Hey, get that, boy. Let's go. 2 times, man.
You knew it was coming, huh? Beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful.
We got heart. We got heart. We got heart.
1 play at a time now. Just 6-0. Just 6-0.
This season, the Seahawks had 4 different players attempt to return kickoffs. By this game, the Hawks were down to Doug Baldwin. Doug was a highly intelligent football player, but this was not one of his brighter moments, bringing the ball out from 6 yards deep in his own end zone. He got blindsided, the ball popped from his grasp, and the Packers recovered. Seahawk fans went into a state of shock. They were no stranger to the Seahawks customarily starting out slow. This appeared a horse of another color. 2 turnovers back-to-back to start the game? You had to wonder, was this not going to be the Seahawks' day? The Packers took over, went back to pounding the ball with Lacy, and again were inside the 5-yard line. But during the Legion of Boom era, when the Seahawks needed a defensive play at the goal line, Earl Thomas put on his cape. You've heard of Area 51? This is Area 29. Earl read the bubble screen and put a stay-where-you-are lick on Randall Cobb to force the 4th down. 7 minutes into the game, this elite Packer offense, boasting Aaron Rodgers in his prime, a stout offensive line, the 2013 Offensive Rookie of the Year, and solid receivers like Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson, and Devontae Adams, had the ball deep in Seahawk territory 3 times, yet all they could manage was 2 measly field goals. 6 points, that was nothing, less than a touchdown, and also back when extra points were chip shot ceremonies. Then the offense went out and was unable to do so much as gain a collective yard. Future Hall of Famer and 35-year-old Julius Peppers manhandled large grown men all over the Seahawks offensive line. In a blink, the Packer offense was back on the field, and again quickly inside Seattle's red zone. Besieged early on as they may have been, this defense was still built on ferociousness, and on a seemingly short, ordinary run up the middle, young tight end Richard Rodgers learned quickly what happens to those who dare meet Cam Chancellor in the hole.
I knocked you on your ass, though. That's what I'm saying.
You did, but guess what?
And I'm going to do it again, though. I'm going to continually do it. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again and again. And you're going to feel it every time, boy. I'm going to kill his ass. Watch. Crosby. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. That's how I hit. I hit like I punch. I hit like I punch.
What?
I hit like I punch.
What is that?
I'll teach you about it. You going to see?
The Packers finally found pay dirt. Rodgers caused a free play false start by changing up his cadence, and Earl Thomas got picked illegally by a Packer, allowing Randall Cobb to break open for the game's first touchdown. Only a quarter off the clock, and down by 13 points, it was looking mighty bleak. Worse even than the scoreboard's reality. Sherman and company tried to rally the troops on defense, but the offense took the field with the same punchless results, unable to even garner a first down. John Ryan didn't help matters, sending a short line drive punt that allowed the Packer returner to bring the ball back to the 33 of the Seahawks. That dangerous Packer offense that had so far lived in the Seahawks red zone was coming back out onto the field in prime position to drive an early stake through the Seahawks' heart. If Earl Thomas was going to tear a labrum in his shoulder tackling someone in this game, you would have thought it was feast mode himself, Eddie Lacy. But in the second quarter, lithe slot receiver Randall Cobb took a handoff, and as Earl upended Cobb, the labrum snapped on his landing. The Seahawks got a key third down stop on the next play, forcing another field goal, but Thomas appeared seriously injured. The offense had been inept, the defense was wobbling, and yet it was still only a two-possession game. But to the trained eye, little was rolling in the Seahawks' favor, and the 16-point lead felt like just the beginning of the deluge. As the Seahawks took the field, the sun broke through the dark clouds as if indicating the ray of hope that remained was still real. The Packers stacked the box as they had all game. Off of play action, Russell went deep on his drop. Intent on willing a big play into existence, it appeared Russell never saw the single high safety Clinton Dix lurking deep. Dix made one hell of a play to change direction, taking his eyes off the ball for a second to then turn back and make a one-handed catch, but the throw should never have been made. And on a day when the worst already kept sinking to new lows, Russell Wilson was blindsided by Clay Matthews on the interception return. Anyone watching Clay over the years knows he has perfected the shoulder shrug to the side of a player's head, but this was a particularly egregious blow.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. He didn't get me that good. He thought he did. Yeah, let's go. Come on. Yeah, I'm good.
To anyone watching, it was obvious Wilson had probably been concussed. Later, Wilson admitted as much, giving credit to the sparkling water drank on the sideline for a quick recovery.
Hey, you know the score is only 16-0. That's all the score is. Doesn't matter what all the other stuff's going on. All this that had happened, they only got 16 points.
That's the best they got, bro.
You know what I'm saying? All that happened.
Let's go, man. It's about how you bounce back. How you bounce back from adversity. Let's go.
Amongst the Legion of Boom, Byron Maxwell had a brief but spectacular run where he in 2 years started 17 games and intercepted 6 passes. With every quarterback's blind reluctance to test Richard Sherman on the right side of the field, they attacked the left side mercilessly. Tasked with this much action, not all corners held up. Maxwell more than held his own. With Aaron Rodgers already petrified to throw Richard Sherman's way, Byron was going to get a steady dose of action on this day. The Packers tried to isolate him with their best receiver, Jordy Nelson, and found some success until Maxwell showed off his ball skills, scooping a game-changing interception off the turf just as the Packers were knocking on the door to making it a 3-score game. As every other pass had become an interception, the Seahawks offense simplified things as they took back over. They leaned on their heavy formation to give their running game as many blockers as possible and let beast mode brutalize his way to the first Seahawk first down of the day. The 12th man gave a standing ovation. It was that type of game. Another first down, and Earl Thomas returning from the locker room, rocking his shoulder harness and looking ready to go. Could this be it? Had the ill fortunes of the day finally turned? There was still plenty of... Damn it. And Russell's interception parade added another float. Russell woefully underthrew the pass, while Jermaine Kearse continued his awful day, drifting backwards with the throw, making no effort to high point the ball, and very little energy to even stop the interception. It was one of the most gut-wrenching halves of football Seahawks fans had ever seen, and that was saying something. The only saving grace was the defense. That tough crew of hardened men withstood the offense's many failures to keep the Packers within striking distance. Offensively, the Hawks knew they could run the ball and little else. So to start the second half, they took no chances and tried 3 straight runs, only to get stopped a yard short of the first down. It was a 3 and out, but at least it wasn't another turnover. On the first offensive play for the Packers of the second half, Eddie Lacy showed off his nimble feet, cutting to the edge, but Earl Thomas, his shoulder hanging by a thread, went full speed at the man that must have outweighed him by nearly 50 pounds. He gave Lacy a wallop so good he placed him on the Seahawks bench. How hard does someone have to hit you to knock you into your future team? The hit set the tone for the half. This defense would not break.
Hey, we just gotta stay in the tight mode. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? I gotta go for it. I'm gonna keep fighting. Let's go. Hey, we gotta stay in attack mode. It's the playoffs. Let's gotta go for it, man. Just 16-0. Just 16-0. That's it.
The Seahawks offense finally put together a decent drive, finding success on beast mode shoulders and in the short passing game. Then, like all good things on the day, the drive began to crumble. A false start, a Clay Matthews sack, and Seattle was looking down the barrel of a 3rd and 19.
3rd and 19 from the Green Bay 48. Russell still looking.
Oh, look!
Now he fires. He's got Doug Baldwin leaping to make the catch.
The big play got the Seahawks into field goal range, but Marshawn Lynch dropped a sure touchdown catch, making that as far as the Seahawks could threaten. The kicking unit came out, and even though it was a very short, very makeable kick, no fan went to the fridge. In this wild affair, even ordinary plays were turning into Antarctic excursions. And this held true as the Seahawks attempted a fake. John Ryan must have heard the play call and knew this was his chance of a lifetime. The punter, that oft uncelebrated position that revolves around only being used once the team's offense has failed, was about to be given a chance to shine in his role as a holder. Every magic trick consists of 3 parts. The first is the pledge. You show your audience something ordinary. In this case, John Ryan shows the Packers his typical holder stance. In a moment, the man will be trying to outrun a world-class athlete to the edge. But Ryan keeps his knee pressed to the turf, his foot turned over in order to show no tells. The second part of the magic trick is the turn. The magician takes the ordinary and does something extraordinary. Ryan took the snap, sprung from the ground, and sprinted for the left sideline. The Packers were caught completely flat-footed. Packer Devon House had seemingly gone all in on blocking the kick, but he made a smooth readjustment as Ryan ran past him. Maybe it was determination, maybe it was unbridled fear, but John Ryan found a burst of speed he never knew he had. John hit the afterburner so hot he was able to slightly ease up on the stick and throw a pass that looked like the drunk guy in the bar flinging the last dart of the night into the board as he was falling out the front door. As Ryan's pass took flight, the third act of the Seahawks' magic trick, the prestige, became apparent. Sometimes backup tackle, sometimes tight end Gary Gilliam also played his part in the deception to perfection. He feigned his block just enough to fool A.J. Hawk, who became so fixated on Ryan and his speed he let Gilliam slip right by him. The fluttering wounded duck landed softly in the former college tight end's hands. Ryan turned to mock Aaron Rodgers with his own discount double-check celebration. Suddenly, the Seahawks had life.